Hello all, it is the Gothiest Ghost of them all, Caspa in the flesh, and it's time for a review of His Happiness Shall Come First, even though we are suffering. Backxwash is a Canadian trans rapper, and this is the third installment of her very harrowing trilogy. And yeah, she definitely brings a very haunting vibe here. And when I say haunting, I don't mean like these really cheap, sounding like they could have been off like a Halloween Effect soundtrack, and then her just rapping off of it to like a generic trap beat. No. What she brings here is a display of metal, soul. She basically scratches the itch of what you would want when it comes to a rapper and mixing metal. And I know metal and rap don't have the best marriage. I know. But there are moments where we get gold. And this is definitely one of them. Because not only does she rap well, she also produces too, and she brings on bands such as Pupil Slicer on here to add definitely the much needed effects and much needed emotional potency that you would want from rap and metal. And also another thing too she adds on here is some soul samples. There are soul samples on here. And like I said, she definitely gives you what you'd want when it comes to rap. She gives you flow, she gives you a very emotional vocal performance, she gives you bars, she gives you storytelling. Honestly, I don't know what else you'd want from her, to be honest. And when it comes to like the metal, we get these blazing guitar solos, distorted guitars, heavy drums, like visceral vocals, the dirtiness and rawness of metal that you would want, or that I would want, okay? Because I like my metal dirty. I like my metal to be blood on the wall, nothing pretty about it. Unless, of course, it's going in more of like a tongue-in-cheek direction like Ghost. But other than that, when it comes to the modern metal, I like it raw, I like it heavy. That's what I like. Not to mention the shredded hellish vocals accompanied by Pupil Slicer on here. And she also not only brings like emotional potency when it comes to her vocals, but the instrumentation too, because she just goes through like all these passages and they just hit every step of the way. Like on the track Vibanda. I hope I got that right. Which has these great passages going throughout, very smooth. Just adding like ascending choir vocals from Mozart's Lacrimosa, these skittering hi-hats over these pounding drums with these droning, blazing guitar leads on the back end. And it just blends and coalesces so well. Like, it just gives me like absolute chills when I hear it. And I'm to a point where I don't know if I should like head bob or cry or throw up the devil horns or do both. I don't know. But yeah, like, she just definitely goes all out here. And there are moments where she's rapping about religion, animosity from her family, society, mourning of people who she's lost, suicide, paranoia. Like, it's all on here. And her absolute manic with a cause track, Nyami, with an absolutely insane vocal feature from Pupil Slicer. As I mentioned before, like, Backxwash holds nothing back. So if this content triggers you, you may want to fall back. You may want to. And she's just expressing her paranoia of being like a victim of a murderous transphobic society, and she's just letting it all out here. And she's also like expressing this due to the accompaniment of the systemic oppression of the LGBTQ plus community as well. And she's just holding nothing back. And it doesn't ease up, especially on Muzungu, where she's having these thoughts of suicide with like a rope around her neck, but it parallels to the devastating fate of her ancestors due to horrendous circumstances of racism, paralleling like the self-loathing that was taught through slavery and now brought in like present time in this image. It's a very reflective moment. It's very fucked up. And I know, like, as a white dude, like, what do I know? But the truth is, I don't know that experience, but I could feel for that. I know that's fucked up. I know that's wrong. And the important thing to do is just like bring this up, bring these topics up. And I feel Backxwash really hits the narrative here, and she does it extremely well. Some nice features on here as well, as I mentioned. Pupil Slicer, censored dialogue, Sadistic, who I'm not a huge fan of, but adds to the track that he's featured on. Guys Guevara, and Michael Go. And I feel there's a sonic progression on Zigoloz where censored dialogue starts it off with a very meditative, very reflective verse, very distraught opener, and then Sadistic comes in, picks it up with these momentous flows, and it just goes across the track, flows across the track really well. And Backxwash comes in with these very very shouted vocals to kick off the ending of the track. She ends it off very well. She is the closer of the track and kills the closer. And these dramatic synth horns to cap it off. Also, I love like the nature samples that are on here that are like fluttering throughout the track. I think that's a nice touch in the background. And Muzungu is kind of a low point for me. I appreciate the switch up. I appreciate like how she was going for something different, but the skittering hi-hats, the cheap synths just are kind of grating and doesn't really add much to my enjoyment. I'm sorry. And as long as I'm expressing the low points of my opinion, I also don't really care for NFWITI. Like the buzzsaw guitars are really buried in the mix. Also, the change vocally is kind of grating, unfortunately, but I'm sure her fans will enjoy that. I'm sure. It's just for me, it was a low point. But aside from that, the ending of the album is fire. Fire tracks after. We also get the very traumatic confessional track Kumoto, where she talks about her yearning for acceptance and making a friendship with this woman who's like terminally ill, and then neglecting her to fit in, and then showing immense regret after her passing. Like she's just reflecting on what she thinks of as like her evil deeds, and she's just letting it all out. Like I said, no holds barred. And then we get a very heart-wrenching, light at the tunnel moment at the end of this album. It's a change of pace, and it actually fits here. It's a change of sonic elements that actually fit the album and it close it out well. Now, when I first heard this, I heard like these staticky noises. Like, it's definitely an effect, because when I heard this for the first time, I was like, oh no, are my headphones ruined? Like, I thought my headphones were ruined for a second. But then when I went back to it, I'm like, okay, this is a effect, and it fits because it's the closer. So of course it's going to get staticky to add the element of finality, which I thought was a nice touch. But also another thing too is like, it's just a very touching track. You know, it's very uplifting. It touches on her battles of substance abuse, her thoughts of self-harm, and forgiveness for her father, like despite his lack of support for her transition. And it's just a very touching send-off, and definitely emotionally impactful way to close out the album. So yeah, this album was great. I felt like it was definitely a nice closer to the trilogy. Do I enjoy it more than I Lie Here Buried with My Rings and My Dresses? No, but that doesn't change the fact it's still great. And I am feeling a 4 out of 5 on this album. That's what I think of it. Also, I want to add too, I definitely appreciate the elements that were added here to add more versatility to it, because I do feel like on this, she definitely did add something to cause progression sonically, stylistically, to keep this thing interesting. And I definitely appreciate that as well. So, yeah. That's it. That's my opinion on it. What did you think of this? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? And that's it. Backwash, Caspa, the Gothic Ghost. Till we meet again.